Okay, so for today's warm-up, what we're going to do is we're going to be laying on our belly. So what we want to do is we're going to have our hands just out to the sides, like here, a little bit wider than our shoulders. Our head's just off the floor, but make sure your neck is in a neutral alignment, so you're actually looking straight down at the floor. We don't want to look up like that, because as you can see, it creates a really sharp curve in the back of the neck, and you'll end up with a stiff sore neck. So head in line, neck in line with the rest of the spine, and then we're going to do some, imagine you're sort of doing like swimming in the water. Now with this movement, if you have very tight hip flexors and your lower back gets pulled into a sharp curve just by laying in this position and it feels uncomfortable, you can use a pillow or roll the mat, and you can put it under your pelvis. Okay, so the idea of putting it under the pelvis, not under the belly, but under the pelvis, and we can go from there, and we want to have it on our actual hip bones so that it tilts our pelvis back. Okay, so it tilts it back that way, so we're not getting that sharp curve in our lower back. That's just optional, you don't have to use that. So we're just going to kick our legs. As we're kicking our legs, I want you to squeeze your butt muscles. Okay, so as one leg comes up, squeeze, relax, left and right. Okay, like so. So we're really trying to engage the glutes. I don't want you to push your belly into the floor, but I want you to push your pubic bone into the floor. Okay, that will help to engage the glute muscles and not overarch through the lower back. All right, give it a little break. And then we're going to bend one leg and we're going to just do a little lift. Okay, so I'm just trying not to turn my spine. So I'm trying not to twist my hips, trying not to arch into the lower back. I'm just literally lifting my knee off the floor like a centimeter or two. Okay, other side. And you should feel your butt muscle contract as we do this. Again, if you feel your lower back arching, you may want to put a pillow under the pelvis to try and tilt it back so you're not overarching through the lower back. All right, and then we're going to turn over onto our back. Heels close to the bum, feet pointing straight ahead, and then we're just going to bridge up, and we're going to do some little mini bridges. Okay, so I want you to squeeze your bum, just bend the hips a little bit, and then take it up to a straight flat line from top of the knee, top of the hip, top of the shoulder. Okay, so we're just getting those butt muscles firing, getting some neural stimulation, so the nerves waking up the nervous system to say, yes, these are the muscles that we want to be turning on. Okay, good. And then relax back down to the floor. And then we'll just finish with some windscreen wipers where we have our feet a little bit wider than the shoulders. And we'll just swish around knees, left and right. Just to warm up in deep into those hip joints. All right, and then we'll start our workout from here. Okay, so for this exercise, what we're going to do, we're going to be laying on the floor. Back on the floor, we're going to have our heels close-ish towards our backside. And we're going to do a bridge. Okay, but the bridge, it's going to be a hold, and we're going to aim for somewhere between 20 to 30 seconds. So we're going to lift our hips up. When we bridge up, I want you to pay particular attention that we fully lock the hips out. Okay, so we need to make sure belly button's slightly sucked in. Our pelvis, we don't want to be arching through the lower back. Okay, we want to be really tilting the pelvis slightly back, squeezing our bum. So you should feel the dimples in the sides of your bum. That's a good indication that the glutes are working. Top of the knee, top of the hip, top of the shoulder should form a straight line. We don't want to be finishing our bridges like this because we're not getting full hip extension. Now, the knees and toes need to be pointing in the same direction. We don't want to have our toes turned outwards. We want to have the center of the kneecap lining up with the second and third toe, the feet about shoulder width apart. And I want you to, when we're in this top position, okay, we're going to bridge up, we're going to drive through the heels, squeeze our butt muscles the whole time. And I want you to think about your inner thighs, turning them up to the ceiling. So it's almost like your upper thigh bone, you're rotating it outwards. And that's really going to help you. You're probably not going to get much movement through there, but you want to visualize that you're slightly rotating that femur bone, that upper thigh bone outwards, so the inner thighs are pointing up to the ceiling. And then we're going to hold that position with everything activated perfectly like that. And hold that for 20 to 30 seconds. Make sure the hips stay locked up the entire time. If that's too easy for you, it is quite challenging when you really get all of those things engaged. But if it is too easy, you can potentially put a weight on the hips. But I will stress that often I see people do this exercise with a weight, with a really heavy weight, and they don't get full hip extension. So they're not getting their hips all the way up. You need to get the hips all the way up to straight. So I would suggest if you are going to use the weight, you need to make sure that you can get that final little part of the hip extension, which is the hardest part of the exercise, before you add the weight. All right, so with this exercise, we're going to need a step. Okay, so you can just use like a standard step if you've got a step around the house somewhere. We need to make sure before we start this, so we're going to actually be sideways on the step because most steps you may not be able to fit your whole foot on it. So we want to in particular put weight through our heels. So we're just going to be sideways. I want you to imagine you had a line on the center of your kneecap. That needs to point in the same direction as your second and third toe. And we want to make sure that the toes are pointing straight ahead. Okay, so we're going to start standing on one leg, so we're balancing. Now, depending on your strength and your flexibility, when we do this, you need to make sure, so we're going to be squatting down, you need to make sure that we don't lean too far forwards and go forwards with our knees coming past our toes. That puts a tremendous amount of pressure through our knee joint, and we definitely do not want to be doing that. We want to be working the posterior chain of muscles, so through the back sides, the glutes, the hammies in particular. So we need to make sure we sit heavy into the heel as we drop our weight down, sit our bum back. Okay, so we get our balance, and then depending on how far you can go down, if you can go the whole way down, then I recommend flexing your foot back, and then we're just going to sit down into it, to a flat foot, and then come back up. If that's too hard for you, then you can have the toes pointed, and you can just use it as like a little bit of a kickstand, okay? So a little bit of balance, down, and then come back up. But we're not coming hard down onto this foot and pushing off it, okay? So we don't want to drop and have weight and push up off that foot. This leg's the working leg, okay? So remember, we're keeping that alignment. We're not allowing our knee to project out past the toe. We're sitting our hips back, neutral spine, so long spine. I go down slowly. If I can go to flat foot, I'll go to flat foot. If not, you can point, a little bit of a kickstand for balance, and then we come back up. But we're 90% of the weight is all on this front leg into the heel, keeping that alignment straight, up and down like so, and then face the other way for the other leg.